Take a deep breath. Know that you are loved. Take a deep breath. Know that you are loved. Breathe. You've arrived at the Evolving Lover podcast. This transmission is brought to you by the Online University of Love and Sexuality. We would love you to receive all of our podcasts and videos at www.uls.online. Now, here is your host, the funny, thoughtful, and loving Steve Burford. Enjoy.
Today, I'm on the line with Chiara Mazzucco. She's in New York. She's someone I've been following for a while. I saw her as first as a founder of a awesome women's lifestyle magazine, which she founded and was the CEO of. And now she's moved into business and lifestyle coaching. And I've seen her videos recently a lot around dating and how we balance that lifestyle as an entrepreneur or even a busy person, and all the things that come with that, and the spirituality that comes with that, with actually going out there and dating. So that's something we want to talk about today. So hi, Chiara, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So I gave you a bit of a brief introduction there. Do you have something you can more tell about yourself and what you're doing right now to the audience?
Yeah. So I actually got started in this world about 8 years ago, and I actually started writing about dating and relationships. I published a book. So this was my realm of expertise, we'll say, to start. And then, you know, like you mentioned, I ran a women empowerment magazine for about 4 years. And what I'm doing now is basically kind of an integration of everything, which is I've always had the mission to really help empower people to live their best, most authentic, most empowering lives. And I do so by helping people transition from soul-sucking 9-to-5s basically into entrepreneurship. But what I do goes a level beyond, and I actually incorporate a lot of life coaching in it, and that, you know, tends to involve dating and the realities of dating as adults, and you know, and balancing that with not only who we are and who we've developed into as individuals and on our life path, but also just balancing it with the realities of our day to day. So I kind of do a whole bunch of stuff the way that I support my clients and my readers. But it brings my soul to life. So I love what I do.
Yeah, you always look so fired up in your videos, and your content that you produce is awesome. And you get so much engagement from all the people in your network that it's clearly clear that you're having an impact. So maybe if we can start with a bit more about your journey on the dating side of things, rather than the professional side of things. I know I saw in one of your videos you I think you were married, right? And you went through a separation, and maybe you can talk about a bit about what you've learned through your journey so far. That would be awesome.
Yeah. So I actually, so I'm 30 now. I think I got married when I was 24.
That's young.
And I met who I knew would be the next great love of my life, and he really was. You know, we made a baby and everything was wonderful. We both had a very ambitious entrepreneurial bug, I'd say. And at the time we were living in Los Angeles, and my family decided to move back to Italy. So we decided to go to New York to give our son the opportunity to be around family. And when we got here, everything just kind of fell apart unexpectedly. It wasn't not looking back in hindsight, like there's really, it wasn't bad and it wasn't good. It just was two people evolving separately. And we did what we could to try to keep it together, but it didn't work out, which, tends to happen a lot. But I think what we did differently is that instead of trying to jam the puzzle pieces to make it fit, we honored not only the connection that we once had, but also just the fact that our job, our responsibility was to our son, and that we had to do the best we could to make sure that he felt loved and was raised in a loving environment. And so we decided to separate. And we ended up doing things a little bit differently. We now co-parent, very amicably. He's been in a relationship now for a couple of years. We've been separated now for 5 years. And we're very good friends, and we continue to parent together as a family, despite us not being together. So lots of lessons learned. And I would say that the most important lesson is just being able to honor that evolution, whether you are evolving together or separately, and honoring that, the initial love that was there, because we never deny, the love never ceased to exist. It just evolved into a different kind of love. So lots of lessons learned. Yeah. And it's a really great opportunity for me to help support, the people that I work with through that experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really important point for people listening. I think it's actually true for every kind of breakup, is that we are usually evolving. Evolving doesn't mean faster or slower or anything. It just means whatever that soul for one person needs to go on for their next experience. And if we're unconditionally loving to someone, we shouldn't have any problem letting them go. It's easier said than done, being in a human body with human emotions. So I want to ask you about that process. Like, how long did that realization take between you and your husband? And then what was the process after that when you both realized? Was it one big conversation, or was it a realization over months or years? What was the process like?
Yeah, I think that, so we had about, I want to say about like 5 or 6 months of like the relationship just like plummeting. And we both knew what was happening. We saw it happen, and the fighting got worse and worse and worse. And the moment, so the first big aha was, we were having a huge fight, and our son was, I think, younger than 2 at the time. And he was present for it. And it wasn't like physical, but it was definitely like loud. And our son was like wiping tears off of our faces, and we just like looked at each other. We're like, what are we doing? And it was just like this like human to human moment of connection where our egos just like poofed, for like a split second. We looked at each other like, what are you doing? So he, and that was when he decided I'm going to move out. And I said, yeah, you need to move out. And so that's where our first real like connection happened. But we did go through about a year or so of ups and downs and trying to really navigate the anger and the resentment and the regret, and the blame and all of the stuff, the grieving really that was coming up. And not to mention that we were now suddenly 2 single parents, trying to build our own businesses, but also navigate a toddler, which is like so intense to do. And so we would be in the middle of like, we'd be having fights, but we'd still message each other at 1 o'clock in the morning and be like, he hasn't been to sleep in 3 hours. I don't know what to do. So we would still like, we kind of naturally gravitated back towards each other in terms of co-parenting. We just had a lot of emotional BS that we had to work through. And it wasn't until, we did try to get back together about a year or so after. And it was like a week literally that we tried. And we both were like, no, this is not going to work. And about, I would say like a grand total of about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, when things actually really started to feel good about our new relationship. He had started seeing someone, I was kind of seeing someone, and we are navigating that. But just in and of itself, we had realized how we had been supporting each other through the parenting, despite, our lack of compatibility as romantic partners, So it was definitely an interesting thing. And, I very much still see him as a partner for me, just a different kind.
And what was your process to go through all of that year and a half? Was it things you were doing on your own to go through the emotions, like you say, the grief, the pain, all these things? What were you doing personally?
Yeah, I was, I have a tendency, a lot of my history is having done things the hard way, just because it's kind of just been part of my MO. But when we moved to New York, my family moved to Italy. All my best friends were still in Los Angeles. And, although I could always, pick up the phone, most of that experience was done on my own. And I had to kind of hit rock bottom in different scenarios in order to really flourish and spring back up. There was a lot of emotional purging, where, when the kid wouldn't go to sleep all night, and you're just kind of staying awake crying because you're just so tired, you haven't slept, and you're so angry because he's not here, and you did it the wrong way. And so you cry, and you cry a lot, and eventually the crying stops. And so that emotional purging was really important for me because it helped me gain more clarity. I'm a pretty rational person, but I'm also very emotional. So I sometimes need to, make a way, clear the emotions in order to see things a little bit more logically and rationally. But through that purging, I was able to kind of see things and, realize that it wasn't like things were any easier when he was physically here, So there was a lot of hitting that rock bottom and sitting in it. And also just sitting in the gratitude when we did have good moments. So there'd be times where he was sick and I didn't know what to do and I hadn't slept in 3 days and I had him, and I would just, text message his dad and say help, just can you please help? And he would come midnight, 1:00 in the morning and help just relieve for an hour, and just really sitting in that gratitude really helped the process, I think. And throughout the years, and now 5 years into it, we still sit in that gratitude when, he'll message me and say, oh my God, I'm so sorry to do this, but is there any way you can pick him up from school today? I know it's my day, but I have this meeting. And I'd be like, yes, no problem. And you could really sit in that gratitude when he's like, thank you so much. I owe you. And just having that support makes you really grateful. Yeah. So it really helped the process.
Yeah, that's awesome. And awesome advice for people listening to use those tools that Chiara just mentioned. My next question then is, if we've got entrepreneurs listening who are on the path or even busy 9 to 5, as so to say, and they love their job, but they're extremely busy. And then you hear a conversation like we've just had and you realize, and you probably realize in your own life how intense a relationship is and how much energy it takes and how much energy it takes to build a business or be great at your job. And then you had a child on top of that. I don't know how you managed that as well.
I don't either.
Honestly don't. And so even for myself at the moment, I'm not currently in a relationship, and I guess it's a timing and a desire thing of when you're ready to allocate that energy to build something with someone. Is timing the most important thing, do you think, when going into dating before we even start dating, because it's such a big commitment? Or can we come at it and say, let's not take this too seriously? Or is it, if you're down this is like 3 questions in one, but if you're kind of down the spiritual path, I'm realizing that, as I do, and I'm sure you do, the relationships are a path to kind of being the best person that you can be, and sometimes it shakes us out and shakes all the the bullshit out of us, that you can't really take dating lightly when you realize that. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I've just I've just given you a splurge of information.
No, I can totally see a cohesive thread there. Yeah. So, I mean, really, here's the thing about especially entrepreneurship, but really it is also just if you love your job and if it is a big part of, the phase that you're in life. We all go through phases. And if right now your career and your passion and your skill set, and for entrepreneurs, your creation, if these things are priorities for you, it's not to say that you cannot be in a meaningful relationship, but it is to say that your standards have to go up, 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 right? Like you can't casually date and kind of disperse that energy, amongst like 20 people, and then also have this drive towards your business, because what ends up happening is you build resentment toward one or the other. When you feel that you have this obligation to be in a relationship, or you feel like you have this obligation to commit to your business, but your energy is still deviating and taking you the opposite direction, you end up being resentful towards the other thing, right? Because like, let's say you're growing your business or you're staying at your job, a little bit later because you have to, you're gunning for a promotion or whatever that is. And then you also have somebody who is trying to get your time and is asking you to nourish your relationship. And you have to pick, whatever you pick, you'll have resentment towards the other for having to have made that choice. So my solution to that, and what I really push people to consider and invite them to, or encourage them to invite into their life, is to really increasing and leveling up with their standards of partnership, right? Because it's almost like there is a bar, and if you set that bar high enough, the potential partnership that you can attract will actually amplify your energetic deposit, we'll say, into your business and all other aspects of your life, rather than deplete it. So whenever we and usually this is coming from a place of settling or loneliness, when we don't feel like we are able to be alone, we try to just fill that void by trying to date or trying to, be in a relationship that we know is not a good fit for us. When we do that, that's actually sucking energy out of us, right? Because yes, it takes energy and work to make a relationship work. But if it's that right partner, if it's that epic connection, that partnership, you're also amplifying your energy at the same time. So you're not feeling like your energy deposits are being depleted. So it is a matter of timing, but it's also a matter of a person's readiness to raise that bar. And that comes with having done internal work. You have to do the work inside yourself in order to be able to raise that bar nice and high, so that your standards are high, so that you know exactly the kind of ideal partnership you want to attract, so that when it does show up, you're not building resentment either way, and that person and your connection is actually amplifying the way that you're showing up in other areas of your life. Does that answer kind of?
It's the perfect. It's the perfect answer for sure, right. And an awesome solution to the dilemma that some people might be thinking about. And so my question is, what are some of your things that you will not tolerate?
This transmission is brought to you by the online University of Love and Sexuality. We would love you to receive all of our podcasts and videos at www.uls.online.
Ooh, that's a good question. So my standards, like my bar is super high. Like that's just giving you kind of an example of where I'm at with my business. And, also just I have a son, I've been married, and it with a great love, so it needs to be like mind blowing epic. Right. But the things that I know I do not absolutely tolerate, number one, is actually having somebody make me choose between them and my passions. That's something that no matter how powerful of a connection we have, I have seen that, lead into resentment for me. So that's an absolute no. Um, I also, it's not necessarily that I can't tolerate it, it's just not a good fit for me when there is a lack of ambition and curiosity into personal growth. So if somebody that does not incorporate personal development into their day to day, and or doesn't have the kind of life goals or career goals or just personal goals really, that they're they're paving a path towards, that's not a good fit for me either. Closed-mindedness, it's a lack of, like, depending also what stage of development. Like, I love when a man is really deeply rooted in his masculinity, not on a testosterone level, but just in like assertiveness and like knowing. Like, I love that. But anything less than that is just below the bar for me. I can't, because it ends up creating friction. So even if there's sexual energy between us, it does not last long, and it quickly converts into like resentment or detachment for me easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these are kind of important conversations to have early on, don't you think, with someone? On the first, second, third date, it's got to be something that's a question like this, like, what are your standards in looking for someone? So I don't, because if I was dating you, like, I would have to know those things. Otherwise, men like to know those things so they don't step over the line if they're like consciously trying to have a good relationship, and you need to know what's going on with each other. So
and one solution that I have found for that is don't rush into the first date. People just don't do the preventative work first. They just like, there's a date, there's this handsome person or a beautiful person that wants to spend an hour with me, let's go. I have gotten to the point right now where there needs to be real conversation and real connection first, because great, if you're handsome and the physical and sexual energy is there, like, awesome. But to me, it's not enough. And I don't have, because I am so busy and because so much of my time is split between my business and my son, I need to make sure that hour that we spend together is actually exploring a connection, a real connection. Because if not, like, I'm not looking for like a company. I'm not looking for that. That's not, where I'm at, so I do spend that time. And I think that people, especially in this day and age of online dating and how just quickly it cycles through, like, there's less dating, more let's grab a drink, I think that if people actually took the time to have these conversations prior to those first dates, then your first date, success rate would be a little bit higher, because you were kind of doing a filtering process before, right?
Yeah, so you want to do like a pre-date of 1 or 2 times before you actually start dating it, or something like that.
It's just, honestly, it's a phone conversation or two. It's just taking that time to just explore if you're compatible, if your values, your goals, like what you're looking for. If you have one person that's looking for a committed relationship and someone who's looking for a casual one, that first date is not, it's not gonna go the way that, either one really wants it to.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and it's completely advice everyone needs to hear in this kind of fast-paced world that we are living in. Whether we're running a business or not, we're still like bombarded with, probably, I know women are way more bombarded with requests for dates on internet sites than men are, so like filtering through that with like phone calls or...
Yeah, but it's so yes, there is definitely a quantity thing. But it's not just that. I've coached men in dating and relationships as well. And it's also just like a man's worth, like his time is just as valuable. Just because, he has only 5 options coming towards him as opposed to the 20 doesn't necessarily mean he has to be, he has to give them all a shot for the sake of, the numbers game, right? Like, he still deserves to find a partner who's compatible with him. He still deserves to go through the filtering process, and he still deserves to raise that bar for himself as well. So the man needs to be in a place where he's going to be okay not going on dates and kind of shooting in the dark, because if a woman, one of those 5 women, is not compatible, is not to that level of that bar that he set, basically, that's important too, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It is important, but for men who are perhaps younger or getting into the dating for the first time, they've maybe moved to a city like New York or London or big city. They've come from smaller cities. They may not be used to even meeting a girl in a bar, so they might take every shot just to like get to know someone, like that, and how like date etiquette goes and all these kind of things. So yeah, I too do totally agree with you. For a guy who's sort of 30 plus, entrepreneur, busy life, you don't want to be going out on every date though. You've got to use your time wisely if you're a busy person. So male or female, transgender and or otherwise. How important do you think it is to, if you're an entrepreneur, to have someone who really understands entrepreneurship as a partner? Because you said your husband or ex-husband, now ex-partner, was an entrepreneur, so he very much knew that lifestyle. If we are entrepreneurial, do you think we have to date entrepreneurs, or they have to be extremely compassionate to what that actually takes?
Yeah, well, I think just in dating in general, regardless of whether you have children or what your career path is, a big part of a deep, meaningful relationship is being able to honor and respect, your partner's lifestyle and or commitments. I think that's an important part of a partnership. So the first thing I will say is that, specifically with entrepreneurship and 9-to-5ers, I think it can work, especially if the level of ambition is up to par. The conflict that I see come up is that, entrepreneurs make their own schedule for the most part. And sometimes that means having a completely free random Tuesday. And sometimes it means working 16 hours on that Tuesday. And so what you see come up a lot, or what I have seen specifically come up a lot with the two, is that there's, the schedules and the availability ends up conflicting a little bit. And I definitely believe that there's connections that can go above and beyond that and can, survive that. But I have also seen that come up a lot. One thing I know about entrepreneurs dating other entrepreneurs is that there's, the experience of owning your own business or, running your own business is a little bit different, because we are very emotionally invested in what we do for the most part. And with that comes a lot of, when things go wrong, in our business, like it's reflected in our day to day, because we identify with it so much. So entrepreneurs dating other entrepreneurs, what I see is like there is just a knowing and an understanding of that experience that ends up being really nice, because one thing I'll say as an entrepreneur is really hard when people don't understand what you do or don't understand your commitments or, the choices that you make in your business. So having somebody acknowledge you and understand you and, respect you for them is really important. That being said, I also think that being somewhere around the same timing of your businesses, if you are two entrepreneurs dating, is important, because at the time, my then husband and I, we were both starting our businesses. So, as many of us know, being in the startup phase of a business is very stressful. It comes with a lot more challenges, a lot more sleepless nights. And with sleepless nights comes a lot of lack of patience and obligations. And we are very early time in our relationship and marriage, a time that really needed our, our attention. And we were kind of, sprinkling it everywhere, with our businesses and, all of that. So I don't know that necessarily it has to be entrepreneur dating entrepreneur. And I do believe that somebody who is an ambitious 9-to-5er, who is working a lot and has passion for what they do, I think there's a lot more knowing and understanding there. But, the time is just, that's what I see come up a lot, is that schedule. So just in general, I think it's just being upfront, when you do connect with someone and being like, look, this is my life right now, take it or leave it. But right now I'm very focused on, raising a next round of funding for my business. Right now I'm very focused on my branding and getting exposure for my new venture, whatever that is. Right now I'm working 16-hour days, and I can make time here and there, but like, it's really important to me that you respect that, and just being super transparent about where you're at with your commitments, whether they are, related to your business or just even your personal growth. I've seen that come up a lot too. Like, people will say, look, like, I'm definitely like looking for that epic connection, but I'm also very focused on my spiritual path or my personal development. And that comes first for me right now, so I think it really just boils down to that transparency and communication.
Yeah, awesome advice again, and I totally agree with all of that. It's really, it goes hand in hand with the standards, really. If you're having that conversation early on with someone about what standards you want in a partnership, with potentially with them, or as well as like what standards you hold yourself in your life, with your business, if you've got your own business or your spirituality, and how you want to be held to those standards. And it will be helpful as a partner to hold me to those standards and make sure I'm doing them and supporting me as I continue in my journey with my business. I know one of my biggest role models is Gary Vaynerchuk, and he spoke a lot about how when he met his wife, I don't know what age he was, but he was quite young, I think. But he said on the first date that I'm going to be doing this for 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day, working my ass off. He said that, and he's still like, I'm not stopping. I'm not stopping at anything, because he wants to conquer so much in the business world, and he's already done so much, worth about $500 million already. He's going to try and buy the New York Jets, and God knows what else he'll do after that. So, that upfrontness, and he's a man that has extremely high standards across his life. So, I'm sure entrepreneurs listening know who he is. If you don't, and you're an entrepreneur, please check him out. He's the best. Any parting words of wisdom you want to leave people with? I know you've offered quite a lot so far, some great pieces. So, anything else?
I would say raise those standards, guys. Raise them up high. Whatever your commitments or whatever your life looks like, you deserve that bar to be set high. And if you feel at all resistance towards raising it, and you're feeling fear in being alone, then definitely devote the time and energy and work, whether it's working with a coach or just personal development, that you do on your own, to really doing that internal work so that you are comfortable raising that bar as high as it can go. Yeah,
if you just take that advice today, you can change your life. So, I'm going to be taking the advice. So thank you, Chiara. How can people find out more about you and You're doing coaching for people, aren't you? So what does that involve if people want to get in touch?
So if anybody, feels like any of this stuff resonates with them for whatever reason, just shoot me an email, Chiara@boldself.com. Or just find me on boldself.com. Like, honestly, it's just, I'm so easy to find online, and just connect with me. And, if it's a good fit, like, I would love to, explore that. But, it really depends, because I'm very selective about who I work with. I want the energy levels to be up there. But as Steve, like, I love just providing as much value as humanly possible through my free channels as well. So just get in touch with me, let me know.
Yeah, check out boldself.com. Recommend following Chiara on the social channels. I follow her on Facebook mostly. She does great live videos. If you like watching videos, she's awesome. So yeah, definitely keep following her work. So thank you so much, Chiara.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
This transmission is brought to you by the Online University of Love and Sexuality. We would love you to receive all of our podcasts and videos at www.uls.online.